Welcome to Sykes Peak. Join us as we speak with experts, share inspiring stories, and provide actionable advice to help you reach your psychological peak. So get ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery, growth, and empowerment. So here we are again. It's something must be working right because this is our I don't know, 8th or 9th
100th episode?
Yeah, 100th episode. We'll go with that. So, welcome. I'm Keith Roach,
I'm Sean Van.
and here we are again today. We're going to continue our episodes that we've been talking about self, and we've talked about self-esteem, self-concept, self-image. Today, we are talking about self-confidence. It's a big issue. A lot of people have a difficulty with self-confidence, but if you're, listening out there, it might be a challenge for you to be self-confident. It might be that you are overly self-confident, but we're going to try in the next 20, 25 minutes to do a complete delineation of what self-confidence is. Sean, what level of self-confidence do you have on a 0 to 10 basis, 10 being the highest self-confidence?
10.
10, yeah. I'm there. I'm with you.
I can say that with confidence, though.
Yes. I believe that I'm probably around a 10 too. So is that good or is that bad?
Well, it also depends. I found that there are times when I guess I probably couldn't say 10 because there may be a moment where I lack confidence in a particular subject or a particular moment when my confidence gets shaken. But all in all, I would say that I probably go through life with probably maybe more confidence than I should.
What makes a person confident? Let's
So we've gone from
define it.
self-esteem to self-concept to self-image. Self-image, how you dress, how you present yourself. Self-confidence, I think, is attitude and not just presentation, but behavior. How you act,
Mm-hmm.
how you will this belief about yourself, this value about yourself into your life. Um, more than just a belief, vaguely.
I recognize that I have certain capabilities, and I'm confident in those capabilities. I used to run track, and my track buddies probably would, say I didn't run it very well, but I felt like I was pretty good. I mean, I gave it my best, but I practiced it. Knowledge, am I very smart? No, not really. Do I have a high IQ? I don't even know. But at the same time, I know what all those things are. Why? Because I studied.
Right.
So I have confidence in my understanding of those things. I have confidence in my own personal knowledge. There are some things I don't know, but I go ahead and try.
You willed them into existence by practice and self-discipline and
Right.
by putting yourself to the task of becoming. I think of self-confidence really with athletes more than probably any other group. They're so disciplined in their training, and especially high performance athletes, the top tier Olympians.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, some of their characteristic and some of their personality that comes out in their performances and things like that. There's some of them that I just can't handle.
Oh, for
when
sure.
they do the interview.
Oh, yeah.
There's just some that I just can't.
Oh, yeah.
handle. But then there are some that are very, very open.
Yeah.
Very sharing.
Yeah.
Caring. Very responsible.
Right. But there's a difference in
Very humble.
Well, let's say you got into a boxing ring with someone and you had zero training. zero exercise, nothing put in versus like years of this, and going through one small battle at a time and, standing toe to toe with a small challenge every day
Mhm.
until you got to the point that you're like, I've done 1,000 fights. I know how to fight. Well, sometimes, people around the office or out and about will be like, I just don't know if I can handle today. Be like, it's just Tuesday. You've done Tuesday before.
Yeah.
You've done plenty
Yeah.
of
A
Tuesdays
lot of
before.
Tuesdays, yeah.
But that experience of putting yourself to the task of a challenge and to apply yourself to building yourself up into an education or physically or emotionally or spiritually, you develop that confidence.
Mhm.
But I don't think it comes from pleasantry. I don't think it comes from a a softer approach to going through life. It comes from, I think, applying yourself.
You know, we talked about, in one of the episodes, we talked about, um, being afraid and being fearful,
Right.
and that there's a difference between being fearful and being afraid. Um, that being fearful, you just basically can't do it. You are so
Mm.
fearful of the situation, you just can't do it.
Right.
Being afraid is another aspect that just says this is a challenge to my knowledge, to my experience.
Right.
And I've done that before where I've, stood in a podium and started to speak. And initially, there's just those few seconds of terror,
Mm.
and then I've made preparation for the speech. I know my information. I know what I want to say. Do I follow it word for word? No, but that's just part of the my experience that allows me to have the confidence to carry on.
Right.
We talked about scripture, and one of the scriptures that I wrote down was "Be strong and of good courage." It was one that my family had given me when I first started in working in any type of ministry. Be strong and of good courage. You're going to stand in front of people that do not believe or do not like how you believe, but be strong and of good courage as you defend your faith or as you move forward. We talked about I'm not that guy that is the street corner evangelist.
Right.
Now, let's sit down and we'll talk about my experience in my Christian life. That's a different thing. But but being out on the corner and shouting or walking up to some unknown person and saying, "Do you know Jesus?" That's not my strength. And I'd be scared to death in that situation. I'd be fearful in that situation. But Scripture comes back at me and says, "Be bold." Don't be afraid to talk about your faith. Don't be afraid to talk about what you believe.
Right.
And so that presents a challenge for me because in my life, I have opportunities to talk about it. So my level of confidence has to do with my level of understanding of the situation, level of knowledge of the situation, and not whether or not I can do it. No, there's some things I recognize are beyond my capability because I don't have the tools, whether they're physical tools, hammers, wrenches, and such, or they're psychological tools or, educational tools. If I got into, for example, a conversation with my pastor on philosophy, I'd get lost in a hurry.
So what would happen to your confidence in that?
So in that situation, I would just sit back and do a lot of
right.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Yeah. Wow, how did you know that? I would build his level.
Right,
Of
yeah.
confidence. Man, you're so smart. I did not understand this.
Right.
I never had a good experience with philosophy.
Right.
But that didn't stop me in my first philosophy class when the philosophy teacher walked around the the room going, if God is so omnipotent, if God is so omniscient, if God is so altruistic, then why do we have pestilence? Why do we have disease? Why do we have problems with alcoholism? And, I look around the room, I'm a 17-year-old, and I look around the room and nobody's raising their hand. Everybody's got to, kind of looking down at their book, see if the answer's in there. And I raise my hand and he goes, yes. And I said, well, we have those things because the nature of man is evil and we have sin in our lives. And he looks at me and in front of the class, oh, we have a Christian in the room. There was a flood of embarrassment. Now, all of a sudden, I represent the Christian aspect of the human race in my philosophy class. And from that point on, my prayer was, God, just let me have a D in this class so I don't have to take it again, and it was a challenge for me, but
get degrees. So.
yeah, D's get degrees. That's true. But what I did was, it challenged my level of confidence. Now, did it make me go and want to read more philosophy? No, he embarrassed me. I mean, if he had approached it in a little bit different, thank you for sharing that. There is that aspect of mankind that believes that sin causes it. If he had come across from that and been more educated, no, he was very demeaning. He put me down. He totally rejected Christianity and the Christian world viewpoint.
But
And
that didn't shake your confidence as a Christian. It only shook your confidence about philosophy.
and being a student in that philosophy class.
Or being his student again.
Yes, right. That was not going to happen.
Right.
And then when I got to seminary, I had to take another philosophy class. Now,
Well,
this guy was,
different.
different, but I because of my experience in college,
right.
it created a problem for me later on. But self-confidence, when I think of this, I think of I want to be bold
Right.
because Scripture tells me be
Right.
bold,
You have to be.
and that's always a challenge.
Why do you
So-
think people choose? I wonder if sometimes the reason people choose the things that they do in life to go after is because they already have existing confidence in it.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, it's
Like, I'm not going to confidently become an astronaut because I know that I'm not likely to be. I mean, just being honest about myself.
the physics would kill me.
Yeah, it's just I would die. So
yeah.
no, I'm not. I have no confidence in trying to sign up to be part of the space program and put myself through those grueling, trainings and things like that. I'm not going to be an MMA fighter. I'm not going to go. There are things that I know, and I don't think that doesn't diminish my confidence about myself or about my life. I don't think that's the same thing. I don't think people would oftentimes challenge me and be like, I think you're too confident as a person and be like, well, why? I haven't met a challenge I haven't been able to overcome yet. And they're like, well, you're not this. And I'm like, well, that's not the same thing. You're not that either. Like, right. And I think that sometimes people defeat themselves again before they've even met a challenge. But a fair amount of honesty has to be in place.
Well, let's break it down simply. Like being a parent. I don't know how simple it is to be a parent.
gosh.
I mean, getting to that point of being a parent may be simple, but after the fact of becoming a parent, that all changes. I mean, because there's, all of a sudden you have another life that's your responsibility, and now you have to figure out when to protect that life, when to let them experience the pain and suffering.
Mhm.
You've got challenges that you have to face when when that happens. Does that mean that at that point, you've got to be confident in what you do, and you've got to be aware of the words that come out of your mouth and how you're training and teaching your child as they grow up.
Right.
Um, uh, Screaming at them from the stands at a ball game um, becomes very, very embarrassing to them.
Yeah.
I had when I was a kid and I was playing little league baseball. I was at bat, and we pitched to each other. So we didn't have coach pitch and we didn't have t-ball, and we pitched to each other. And so this kid was pitching and ball way outside, and the umpire goes strike. And I stopped and I turned around and looked at him, and he looks at me and he goes, "Tell her to shut up." And I said, and I looked at him and I was like, "What?" My mom's in the stands and she's just yelling, and I'm just, she's encouraging me, but she's also picking on the umpire because he was a friend of my sister's and she knew him. And so she was calling him out while he's calling strikes and balls. And the next pitch comes in, it's over my head, and he goes, "Strike." And I went, and I turned around and looked at him and he said, "Tell her to shut up." And so I, put my hand up, walked over to the fence, and I go, "Mom, stop." And so, because he's getting ready to call another strike,
Yeah.
and the kid could throw it over the backstop. He would have called it a strike.
Yep.
Well, that's the, you have parents in the stands that are yelling and screaming at their children, and the kid is just like, he just wanted to play ball,
Yeah.
or chase butterflies out in left field, or whatever, So, but I'm sitting there looking at the webbing in their glove. I mean, they're discovering,
Right.
they'll figure it out, they'll work it through. Not every kid's going to be scholarship ready,
Right.
So
And and it's interesting too, because I think like your philosophy class, when you've lost every game, whether a parent was yelling or not, it eats at your confidence. It can eats at that self-esteem, that self-image, that self-concept. And so it can, not saying it does every time or in every circumstance, but I think that having those successes, putting yourself to a challenge,
well, I agree with that, but at the same time, there's also understanding the failures, and
that's
how to deal with the
that was what I
failures.
wanted to get to, was failures.
You
Because
know,
how do you deal with failure separate from like allowing it to guide you and not defeat you?
well, in a failure, now, if you apply yourself and you've put yourself in a situation
Uh,
and it all goes wrong, or you don't win, or you fail, or you
Right.
don't pass,
Right.
as long as you know that you've put in the effort
Right.
to know what to
Right.
do. Playing a game. We'll
Yeah.
use athletics for this example. I can use studying for tests
Right.
as an example.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in athletics, you play the game, the other team wins.
Right.
Do you go home a sore loser, or do you go home going, how
Right.
did I play?
Right.
Reevaluate what I did,
Right.
which is what you do
Right.
if you know yourself to have the ability to win the game.
I think, yeah, knowing yourself, because when I think when I first got out of high school, um, I got to college, just talking to someone this morning about this. I went to pretty liberal school,
Mhm.
and in high school it was very conservative, but the viewpoints on how to analyze literature, how to write papers, was so different.
Mhm.
I failed terribly the first time I went to college,
Mm.
and I had struggles socially. There were a lot of factors. Part of it was the lack of self-awareness, not knowing
Mhm.
what program I was supposed to be part of.
Right,
I was
right.
studying the wrong
What am I
stuff,
doing here? Yeah.
and I kept insisting that this was going to be my life. I kept pushing myself to that agenda, that I just made myself miserable.
Hmm.
And it took years of taking a step back, and getting to know myself and adapting socially to the culture here in the US, to finally get to a point where I felt like I now see the path I need to take and could confidently go into that going, this is it, and take the hits and keep going and
Mm.
not take the hit and go, well, back to the drawing board, you know?
Right. Right. And and like I said, example of losing a game, but you realize that I practiced hard. I looked at it.
Right.
I learned the plays. I knew the stuff that I was supposed to do. It's just the other team got the breaks,
Mhm.
or the other team, which they might have had some better athletes. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a number of different reasons, but they're not excuses. You don't
Right.
use the excuses. You just say, okay, I go back, I study more, I
Mhm.
practice hard, I do the things I'm supposed to do,
Right.
but I enjoy the game. Now, a second example, and this is personal, and that was the licensure exam to become a licensed therapist. Um,
Yeah.
it's the hardest test I've ever taken in my life,
Oh, I bet.
and I passed it on the third take
Yeah.
with by 1.25. I mean, that's what you had to have a 80 to pass, and I'd had 79.5, and I got on the third try, I made an 81.25, and uh, I didn't look at the other two going, I must not be a good counselor, or I'm shouldn't do this, or I need to find another occupation or anything like that. I just thought, well, I need to study harder. I need to study something more specific. And um, and so on the third try, in between, I went to a study session that was set up for people that were taking the test. Paid $300, and had the same score that I had on the previous test. And I thought, no, I can do this better. And so I did.
Mhm.
Um, and I came back. I still had the confidence. I still had the ability. I still knew what I was talking about. I still was doing counseling. Um, I just walked in and uh, did the test. I didn't fret over it. I
Right.
didn't worry about it. I just went ahead strong and good courage. That was
Right.
my approach. So
With with confidence growing through successes, how can a person avoid the pitfall of pride?
well, I think that with recognizing, and this goes back to your self-esteem, your self-concept, your self-image, recognizing who you are, number one, in God's eyes. You're important to Him. You're valuable to Him. Um, he recognizes you uh, wherever you're at, if you're on the top or if you're on the bottom. But at the same time, we talked about there being a balance in that
Mhm.
in that self-esteem. Too
Right.
much self-esteem, too low self-esteem. That there's a balance in
Right.
there, and I think that understanding that balance
Mhm.
keeps you from being
Yeah.
prideful to the point of being braggadocious.
Boastful and arrogant.
You
And
still,
like,
yes,
yeah.
you still need to have
Self-confidence. Yeah.
some sense of pride in yourself.
Healthy pride.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
not, when people use that term healthy pride, it's pride nonetheless.
It's pride. Yes.
It's just the pride that is not arrogant.
Right.
And
Yes.
I have pride in the teams that I played
Right.
on. I have
Yeah.
pride in
Well, it's like you were saying
schools
earlier,
I went to.
with some athletes who in the interviews are able to maintain a certain amount of humility and recognize, like, through my hard work and through my efforts and my teammates, and they're giving these speeches that are wholesome and authentic and real and still show confidence. But then you have those that are, um I knew I was the best. I was going to come out and be the best.
Right.
They never stood a chance.
Right.
And yeah, that there's that pitfall of that confidence getting out of hand and losing your grip on that. And maybe some of that is because those people, like you said, goes back to that self-esteem. Maybe they don't feel like they have that worth to stand there confidently and talk about their performance without the need for that attention. But
Mhm.
um
Well, and you know, if I won a game, I didn't go running around to the crowd going, "Yeah, look at me, look at me." You
Mhm.
know, uh, what I did was is I went to my teammates
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I didn't win the game by myself. I won the game
Exactly.
because of my teammates. Even if I
Yeah.
hit the winning run,
Yeah.
it was my teammates
Yeah.
that got us to that point.
Yeah.
Um, but and I think that's where the line of being arrogant, proudful, and not being,
Right.
being humility, was humbly proudful.
Right.
Is that a term? Can you say that?
Can you?
Anyway, those are the challenges I think that we have when we deal with self. Recognizing our self esteem, the value that we have, our self concept, the value the view that we have of ourself,
Right.
self image, how we present ourselves to other people, and
Mhm.
then self confidence that gives us the oomph to be able to stand up and do what we need to do as we stand up. To go to the next level in our job, to go to the next level in a relationship.
Right.
Because you got to have confidence in
Yeah.
yourself. If you're presenting yourself true to the world
Yes.
that and you do it with humility, then I believe that you increase
Yes.
in life.
Yeah.
So, but once again, we thank you for hearing our podcast this time, and we'll be coming back to you soon with new episodes. Thank you.